Hello, my name is Ben Fenlon. I am a podcaster, vlogger, writer, panel host, jack of all trade, master of none, not very good at anything. So big thanks to the Splatter Plastic guys for asking me to get involved in this. If you might know me from hosting horror conventions like for the Love of Horror and the UK Horror Cons a couple of years ago, and I've done stuff for MCM as well, and I did the Super Nerds podcast for a couple of years, which did alright, some boss interviews there. The first horror that I ever saw was Halloween. It was probably it's the one that I remember the clearest. I was probably about 5 or 6. It was on BBC, and I had a little square CRT TV in my bedroom. I remember putting it on, and my mum hearing that I'd put it on. It was about 10 o'clock at night. So I'd get in, get the telly off, unplugged at the wall. As soon as she leaves, plug goes in, telly goes back on, volume's right down, teletext subtitles 888, and then I watched Halloween, and I don't know if that was like, it's probably the game changer because it's the one I remember the most. But I also have vivid memories of being in the local video shop when I was younger, looking at films like Maniac Cop and wanting to see those. But yeah, Halloween's probably the one that sticks out the most, and it's a classic even now. And obviously, I've seen it countless times since. Seen it in the cinema on the 40th anniversary. Oh man, on the re-release anyway, and it was cool. It was cool seeing it. Favorite decade for horror would be the 80s because it was the best. But I'm not going to say the 80s, I'm going to say the 2000s because everyone's going to say the 80s. When you look at the 80s, you've got Carpenter, Cronenberg, even dudes like Fred Decker, churning out some seriously good films that didn't necessarily do well at the time, but we've looked back and they're amazing. Even the mainstream stuff in the 80s, like Poltergeist, The Goonies, Gremlins, a little bit of a horror element to all of those. But I'm actually going to say the 2000s. Yeah, I know. As soon as I said it, there's a sharp intake of breath from everyone watching. But the 2000s for horror wasn't just terrible Platinum Dunes remakes, although there was a lot of that. I was compiling my list and obviously doing my research for this to look professional. And there's films like 28 Days Later, Drag Me to Hell, Trick or Treat, the Texas Chainsaw remake, Dawn of the Dead remake, Hills Have Eyes remake. But then there's stuff like Dog Soldiers, the Wreck films, even Shaun of the Dead, and as much as I hate to talk about it, Jeepers Creepers 1 was phenomenal. But there's films like the 2000s, was that the last time? Well, until recently we got installments of the main big slashes because we got Freddy versus Jason and Jason X. And there's a film that stands out for me a lot that a lot of people think is terrible and didn't do well at the time. But if you look at it now, it was so far ahead of itself in terms of where the landscape is now, the zeitgeist in terms of gender, like sexism, I suppose as well. It was Jennifer's Body, directed by Karen Kusama and written by Diablo Cody, starring Megan Fox. And at the time, everyone just lashed it as another terrible Megan Fox franchise, but it wasn't. It's a really intelligent, well-made horror film with a banging soundtrack, which is pure 2000s rock. But yeah, it's a great film, and if you've never seen it, give it a look because Chris Pratt's in it, J.K. Simmons is in it, Amanda Seyfried, a lot of Adam Brody, there's a lot of Satanism and rock stars. It's where they go. My favourite horror director is probably Guillermo del Toro. It'd be too easy for me to say John Carpenter. And there's a little bit of a shout out to Fred Decker as well because he only directed 2 horror films and they're both bangers, Monster Squad and Night of the Creeps. But Guillermo del Toro has directed horror and horror infused films pretty much his whole career. Even Crimson Peak, which is like a gothic romance, is still scary as anything. Then you've got his Spanish language stuff like The Devil's Backbone, Kronos. Pan's Labyrinth's a fantasy, but it's still pretty scary. His blockbusters, I mean, I know Pacific Rim isn't really horror. Blade 2 is an absolute banger. Horror, action, kung fu. It's got the cat from Red Dwarf, a bit of everything. Yeah, he's a tremendous director. I think going back, the first film I saw from him was Mimic in the late 90s with the cockroaches that turn to human-sized. Oh, it's a terrible premise for a film, but he pulls it off so well. Apparently there's a director's cut floating around, but I've not seen that. But I loved it at the time. So yeah, Del Toro. Everything he touches turns to gold for me. He did a TV show, the Strain. And that was pretty good as well. Vampires. Again, he keeps going back to the same marble skinned vampires from Chronos and putting them in everything. They're in Blade. It's just, and he's got a distinct look that works. Like it is, everything's very fantastical and dreamy. Even his Hellboy films, really really good stuff. So when choosing between gore and suspense, I found this one was probably the hardest question because everything is every decent horror's got a bit of both, except Blair Witch Project, which is all suspense. I'm probably gonna say gore. To be fair, I mean, get me on any given day, I'll change my mind. But I'm gonna say gore because I love splattery special effects, like really sticky, horrible special effects. Something that's been lost with the advent of CGI. But I love really I don't want to keep going back to John Carpenter, but you look at stuff like The Thing, and just that, and David Cronenberg with The Fly. There's that horrible, like shiny, glistening, horrible body horror, like really visceral. So yeah, gore all day. Gore, yeah. Sod suspense. The only suspense here is that I nearly said suspense. It's gore. It's always going to be gore. VHS, DVD, or Blu-ray, they've all got pros and cons, but I'm going to say Blu-ray, and because I hate VHS. I'm sorry to you VHS collectors and the people with the fond memories of rewinding tapes and stuff in the 90s, but I never liked it. I hated it. It was always chewing up and it was gnarly, and yeah, I don't like VHS. I've never liked VHS. DVD was good, just dead grainy. Blu-ray came out, that was my jam, I thought. Perfect picture quality. It's not too good for the old stuff. Makes the new stuff look great. 4K is boss, but it's a bit too much. It looks like you're in the room with them sometimes. So yeah, Blu-ray for me all day. And I hate VHS, and I'm so glad I can't believe that it's making a bit of a comeback. Like vinyl, it's proper rubbish. So yeah, VHS. The only good thing about VHS is them films called VHS. That's it. In regards to best slasher, I was thinking about this one for a little while because it was like best slasher franchise. I'd probably pick Friday the 13th. Yeah, probably pick Friday the 13th. That's quite a cool franchise. But pretty samey to an extent, but I like Jason as a character. But if we're talking individual best slasher films, I would go nowhere near any of the Friday the 13th films. I would pick Scream, by the Wes Craven Scream, or I'd pick The Burning. I mean, obviously Scream turned into a franchise, but that first one is unbelievable. It was like big Hollywood stars. It was like a mainstream phenomenon. Like it launched all spoofs, it launched sequels. Everybody in the 90s knew what it was. And it's endured. Like today you watch Scream, it's still a good film. It's very well made. It's probably one of Wes Craven's best, to be honest. Yeah, it's awesome. The kills are good. It sets up the sequel in like the first or the second scene with Leo Schreiber. It's just so well made, so well done, and yeah, great film. Aged very well. 25th anniversary next year. Makes me feel old. And the other one was The Burning, which is a classic Harvey Weinstein film, which I didn't see until last year for the first time, and it just blew my socks off. Really, really enjoyed The Burning. Yeah, who was in that? Jason Alexander from Seinfeld, Holly Hunter, loads of like up and coming actors at the time. Fisher Stevens is in there. So yeah, if you've not seen The Burning, like I hadn't seen The Burning, rectify it, get on it. It's got a boss soundtrack by Rick Wakeman as well. Yeah, really cool. George Romero's original Dawn of the Dead by a mile, like literally a country mile, is one of the best films I've ever seen. I taped it off BBC Two or Channel 4, one of them back in the day on video. Watched it the next day and it blew me mind. Like I'd seen horror movies before, I'd seen Night of the Living Dead, I'd seen all kinds of stuff, but Day of the Dead literally just changed the game for me completely. It wasn't over the top scary, but the sense of despair and dread and watching society crumble as they went into that shopping mall was just like I'd never seen anything like that before. I mean, I'm aware that sort of 15, 20 years after it came out, but like there was just something about those people being in the shopping mall, and then there's that like pure escapism of them having fun and the thing, and they're sort of not really appreciating the fact that life is crumbling around outside, and then obviously it all goes a bit Pete Tong towards the end, as it does in any great zombie film. But yeah, Dawn of the Dead, I mean, you can see why it's still getting ripped off years later. What are we, 40 years later, 43 years later, something like that. It's still one of the best, not even just zombie movies, one of the best horror films, one of the best 70s films, one of the best films ever made. And his sequels never came close to it, and the remake never came close to it. It's just, that film, it's just a perfect bubble of 70s horror. And I've got a lot of love for it. And I want to go to that shopping mall. Not to shop, just to get pictures and stuff. Best movie monster. There's a hell of a lot of movie monsters. Like obviously there's that, if anyone remembers Deep Rising from the 90s, there's that big squid tentacle thing that was cool. You had like, you know, Freddy's a monster, I suppose. You've got the whole thing from The Thing. I'm just picking obscure monsters, I'm just kidding. For me, best movie monster is Michael Rooker as Grant from Slither. If you've not seen Slither, it's James Gunn's 2006 rip-off of Night of the Creeps. With a little, it's like, it mixes Night of the Creeps with The Thing. It's got like a little bit of that Rob Zombie hillbilly horror vibe going on. It's before he made Guardians of the Galaxy and before he made Super. Obviously, James Gunn was in Troma. He was involved with like Lloyd Kaufman and those guys. I think he directed Romeo and Juliet, maybe, or Citizen Toxie, one of them. And Slither, he sort of takes that sensibility, mixes it with his sense of humour that you've seen in the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Marvel movies, and just a healthy dollop of Night of the Creeps and The Thing, and makes this small town relationship drama, horror, comedy, zombie. Honestly, it's just that he's just thrown everything at the wall and it all sticks and it all works. But sadly, no one went to see it. I saw it opening weekend, and there was just me and the person I went to see it with in the cinema. There was literally no one else there, which, you know, it is what it is. I still don't think it's ever had the UK Blu-ray release, just the DVD. But Michael Rooker, obviously, who James Gunn used in the Guardians movies as Yondu, he plays a character called Grant. He's particularly unlikable, and like he's obsessed. He's like really like possessive over his wife, and then he like he gets a mood on with it. He goes out and tries to cheat on her, but it doesn't happen. And then he gets jabbed in the stomach by this alien life form that's landed in the woods. And through the course of the film, he starts to mutate into this cannibal slug monster, and it's like nasty, gnarly special effects. And then there's a point towards the end where he's like a big gelatinous tentacle monster, and he's give off these like slugs that have infested the town and turned them into mindless zombies, and they're all piling on and becoming this one giant blob monster consciousness towards the end, and they're all speaking with his voice, and they're still obsessed with this one woman, and they're trying to apologise for upsetting her while being a nasty gelatinous cannibal zombie slob monster. Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's largely special effects, like practical effects. So yeah, Michael Rooker as Grant. I await the nasty messages on Instagram and Facebook from people who've seen this. Favourite artist is probably Gregory Crewdson, who is a like tableau photographer. If you follow him on Instagram or find him on the internet, his artwork and his pictures look like paintings. They're absolutely phenomenal, but they're dark and they're like ominous looking. I first came across him because of the movie It Follows. I read an interview with either the cinematographer or the director, and he said it was inspired by the look of Gregory Crewdson's artwork. So I dive onto Google, and there's just these amazing like landscape shots of like depressing Americana, like really blue lit, really sad looking pictures. And you've seen It Follows and you know what it looks like. It's exactly that. So yeah, I mean, I could have said some of those like awesome poster artists, and obviously Graham Humphreys is up there because he is an icon and he's a lovely chap, but his work is his next level. But yeah, Gregory Crewdson, because it's something I'd never heard before at the time when I read the interview, and it's really stuck with me because I quite like that. Like I don't know, like David Lynch, but you know, that type of like sad Americana. I suppose that's how you describe it. Yeah, give it a look. It's really cool. Why not? Really? I think Halloween, obviously watching that back in the day, maybe kick-started something in me, but in the mid-90s, just discovering horror movies through, like we got Sky Movies, and whenever I want to go to bed, I just stay upstairs. I'm like 10, 11 years old, stay up and just plow through these like gnarly movies, and then BBC Two would have stuff on late at night, and then in my teens, Channel 4 used to show a lot of late night stuff. I watched a lot of foreign movies, and I think that was the thing with just horror being, people don't, like, it's, they look, sort of not look down on it maybe, but you know, there's like a sort of stigma around, oh, he's into horror films, he's a creep, or he's a weirdo. It's like, no man, it's like something, I like a lot of other films. Like, I like La La Land, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, I think the idea of watching something that people didn't want you to, or people frowned upon, and then you watch it and you realise, well, it's not what they said it was, but it is something else. And horror seems to have the ability to explore themes and genres and vibes that other films maybe don't want to. Like, you know, Japanese horror, it looks at a lot of different stuff, to American, to French, like to Spanish, and even British. Like, we've got some like really depressing British horror films. You know, like The Wicker Man in the 70s. Like, each country's each country's horror film sort of reflects the psyche of the country at the time. And 28 Days Later, for example, for what was 19 years ago now, 18 years ago, reflected the turn of the millennium Britain, with everyone was angry, everyone was road raging, no one was happy. You know, it's like a massive come down. And then obviously where we are now with Brexit and politics, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of films, horror films, reflected on that real soon. So yeah, I like horror because it looks at life a little bit differently. I think, you know, you've got to open yourself up to the grotesque to really see what's inside. Oh, that's a bit heavy for me. No, loads of blood. I like blood and splattery. Lots and lots of killings. How many killings is in this one? 7. That's what I like. But yeah. So thank you, Splattered Plastic, for asking me to be on. I've just rambled and rambled, but you know, it's been nice getting to talk about things at my own leisure, I suppose. Cheers, guys. Thank you.